If you're looking for a new spinning rod setup, this video is going to be for you. I have an app where I teach people how to fish. It's called the Straight Up Fishing app. And someone in the app today had a question about spinning rods and how do you set them up to catch bass with. So in this video, I'm going to give you everything you need to know about spinning rods so you can buy the right setup, the right length, and the rods and the reels to go with it. So a couple issues that you will have if you're buying a new spinning setup and you don't get the right rod. Here's some things that you may have. And if you've already bought a spinning rod and you notice some of these issues, I'm going to show you how to mitigate that in this video. So if you don't get the right action or power, you may have problems with casting accuracy. It may just be difficult to get distance if you don't have the right power and action. So you're probably wondering, well, Brian, what is power and action? What are you talking about, my guy? So power and action is an industry standard way, a fancy way of trying to tell you how stiff or limber a rod is. So if a rod, this rod is my signature series. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. This is a B-Lat 7-foot medium moderate spinning rod. And what that means, medium means it's not too stiff. Now, if I had a rod that said heavy power rod, that would be a very stiff rod. So if it says heavy, that means it's going to be stiff. Medium is going to be a little softer. Light is going to be very, very flexible. That's all they're trying to talk about. You could dive deeper into that subject, but really all you need to know is that the power is just how stiff or limber or flexible the rod is. Don't let all that jargon confuse you. It's not enough for you to waste your energy in. But if you don't have the right power and the right flexibility in your rod, you might sacrifice accuracy. You might sacrifice being able to have casting distance with it. Okay? So we're going to talk about what the right power and action is for your rod. We'll get to that in a moment. Second thing we're going to talk about is what is the right size reel. When you go down the market, when you look in the glass case at Bass Pro Shops, or if you go to Academy Sports, if you go to Tackle Warehouse website, you're going to see all of these spinning reels, 1,000, 500, 2,500 series, 250s, 3,000. How do I know what's the right size for the fish that I catch? I'm going to show you that in the video as well. Then probably the most important part that people don't give enough attention to is line. One of the most heavily debated subjects in fishing right now is, do I use braid to fluorocarbon or do I go straight fluorocarbon? Do I need to use mono? Do I need to use copolymer? There's a bunch of different line mediums that you guys can use, and we're going to talk about what the best one is for you to use for your fishing. That sound good? So let's start here. I actually have designed a series of rods, and I'll leave a link in the description box of this video. Since we're just talking about spinning rods today, I'll show you my signature spinning rod and why I think this action and power, even if you don't buy my signature one, why this is probably the best and most versatile for all spinning rod fishing. So when I'm using a spinning rod, I only use this one for everything. Drop shots, shaky heads, wacky rigs, small swim baits. If I have a spinning rod in my hand, if I'm fishing for trout, if I'm fishing for bass, if I'm fishing for striper, if I'm fishing for just about everything except panfish, this one right here. You don't have to ask any questions. This is the spinning rod that I use. Let me tell you a little bit about it. You can get this at bassmooch.com. It's a very affordable, very good rod to use doing anything. It's a 7-foot medium moderate. I like a 7-footer. Some people will tell you need a 7.1, 7.2, 7.3, 7.4. I have found in my experience that a 7-foot medium power rod will get me through any situation that I come across on the water. So this is the rod that I like. I would love for you to buy my new Signature Series rods. There's actually 5 in the lineup. There's 2 spinning rods. One is this one and the other one is an ultralight, and there's 3 casting rods as well. But today I just want to talk to you only about the spinning rod because that's what the question in the app was about. So 7-footer medium power rod. And when I say medium, you're going to look on the back side of it on all your rods, and usually it'll tell you the length and it'll tell you the action and the power. You want to see a MM or MH is probably what you want to see. 7-foot MM or MH. Now, let's talk about rod power and action. When you're looking at rods, the power and action isn't the same across all manufacturers. So I might use a medium heavy in my particular series, but then you go to another manufacturer, medium heavy may feel totally different. It's kind of like shoes. You know, a wide in everybody's shoe is not the same wide. So 7 foot medium is going to be the best action and length for you to use for most of your finesse techniques. Let's talk about the reels. Okay, for the reels, this is where it gets a little messy because every manufacturer calls their reel size something a little bit different. In my opinion, the 2500 or 250 to 3000, sometimes they're called 300s, okay? You just want to look for the number 25 or 3. If you look for those numbers, usually you're going to be safe. I found in my experience that the 25 to 3000 series reels are best. If you're asking me what type of reel you should buy, my opinion is that you should buy a reel that starts with an S or a reel that starts with a D. Anything outside of that, it starts to get a little weird. Shimano or Daiwa, let's just say it, okay? And I prefer Shimano. I have pretty much exclusively Shimano reels in my lineup. I just like their reels a lot. This particular one that I'm about to spool up today is a Shimano 3000 series reel. I'm going to tell you a little bit about why I like to use a 3000 series versus some of the smaller reels. If you think about it, when you spool up the line on your spinning reel, the bigger the coil is of line, the easier it is going to be to manage that line. So when it comes off the spool, let's look at the spool line. When you take your line off the spool, if I take it from this size of a spool to that size of a spool, it's going to be much harder to manage because the coil is a lot tighter. I want that coil to be as big as possible, but still not use a heavy saltwater fishing reel. So I like the 3000 series reel because it just has the line capacity to hold more line, and then it holds the line in a bigger coil, which makes it actually easier for me to use the line. When you get a spinning reel, especially if you buy one new out of the box, a lot of times it'll have just a very slick spool on it. And if you're using Braid to fluorocarbon, we'll talk about Braid here in a little bit when I get to the line, but if you're using Braid to fluorocarbon on your spinning reels, that braid will slide on the spool. And so how you fix that issue is there's two ways. One is you could put some type of backing material like monofilament line, fluorocarbon line on the spool to keep the line from sliding on the spool. Or secondly, you could use electrical tape, masking tape, or any kind of tape on the spool to mitigate the line sliding around the spool. I'll show you what that looks like and what it means like here in just a little bit. On my reels, I use electrical tape. I have electrical tape spooled around the spool. I usually go around about 3 times. That'll hold the line, that'll bond the line to the reel when I go to tie the knot, and it'll keep the line from sliding on the spool as I'm spooling the reel up to rig it up. Okay, so 2500, you can use a 2000 series, but in my opinion, 2500 to 3000 series spinning reel is going to be the best. Now, line. Whoa, buddy. Now, when it comes to line, you can come up with you can have a lot of issues if you don't use the right composition of line and you don't use the right size of line with spinning reels. So we're going to start rigging this guy up. So I have my 7-foot medium signature series B-lat rod. If you want this rod again, I really highly recommend this. You can use it to do anything. Bassmooch.com is where you can find it. If you want to look for the ones that have the B-lat signature on it, just like that right there. If it's got the B-lat signature on it, that's my signature rod. Okay, what I want to do, some people like to use straight fluorocarbon. Now, if you're new to fishing, it possibly might be easier for you to go straight fluorocarbon because you'll have less line knots to tie. As you get a little bit more advanced into fishing and you learn how to use more knots, I would highly suggest that you go to a braid to fluorocarbon setup. But if you're a beginner fisherman, It's I would recommend that you spool up your first spinning reel with straight fluorocarbon or straight monofilament. Either monofilament or fluorocarbon. Here's why. You don't have to have as many knots. And so it's just going to be easier for you to get this thing set up and get you out there on the water. When you're doing braid to fluorocarbon, you need to be able to tie a union knot between the braid to fluorocarbon, and that might be a little bit more than you're ready to dive into right now. That could frustrate you, which we don't want to do that, especially if you're just starting off fishing. But if you are going to use fluorocarbon, this is Bass Mooch. This is Bass Mooch fluorocarbon. This is 10-pound test. If you have a 2,000 to 3,000 series rod, the line size is going to be very, very important if you're going to go with straight fluorocarbon. Here's why. Fluorocarbon is a little bit of a pain in the to manage. She's tough, okay? She's curly. She's a little nappy. So it can be tough to manage this line. With that being said, 8-pound and 10-pound tests is what I would recommend that you start off with. Preferably 8-pound. 8-pound test doesn't have so much memory to where it wants to back off the reel a bunch, and it's just going to be easier for the manage. 10-pound works, but it gets a little ugly. Anything above 10-pound test is not going to work really well on these reels. I'll say that again. Anything above 10-pound test with straight fluorocarbon will not be very friendly to use on these reels. If you try to use 15-pound test, 20-pound test, you're going to have problems. It's going to want to coil up and come off the reel. So the first thing I want to do, if I want to spool my line up with my reel up with fluorocarbon, is I need to make a knot to put on my reel. And I actually don't even thread it through the guides or on the reel. I actually make my knot so I can connect my line in my hands. And the way I do that is I just make 2 strands of line just like this. I just take it and double the line up. You can call this a bunny ear if you want to. And you see I have this tag in here. I'm going to take this tag in and wrap it around the back end of my bunny ear. Let's just say 4 times. Should be enough. So I'll wrap it around 4 times. And you can see I made a little loop here at the top. I'm going to stick that line through that little loop. And then I'll wet it just so the line doesn't burn. Just lubricate the line. And then I'll just stick that loop, that bunny ear that I have, I'm just going to stick that over my spool and cinch it down. Okay, I'll take my scissors, I'll cut off the tag end. On the spool, I like to cut the tag end off. And remember, on your spool, it's a good idea to back that spool with either fluorocarbon, mono, or masking tape, or electrical tape. And then all I want to do is just start to spool my reel up. Like I said, we're going to be using 8-pound tests or 10-pound tests. Probably would have helped if I would have put at least 1 guide through my reel. It's very important too for you to pinch. You see how I'm pinching my line with my fingers? I like to put one hand up the reel, pinch that line to add tension as I'm spooling this reel up. Need to make sure I make note of this. I like to label side up. I don't want to lay my spool down on the table like this. I don't want to lay my spool down like that. I just do label side up. I want that line going on my reel the same way that it's on this spool. So label side up. And I'll just fill my reel up. Adding too much or too little line to your spinning reel can cause a lot of problems and make your line want to jump off the reel. So I'd rather have too little line on the spinning reel than too much. If you have too much, the spool is designed to help contain that line on the spool. And if you put too much line over there, it's going to want to spill over the top of the lip, that little beveled edge on the spool. And it's just going to cause you a lot of problems. You're going to get bird nests. You're going to have a lot of issues. Make sure you keep that line below the level, below the bevel that's on the spinning rod spool. For my little bit more advanced guys that are looking to set up a fishing rod, you may want to use braid on your spinning rod. I highly recommend braid, especially if you can tie a union knot, a line-to-line union knot. The braid has a lot of advantages over the straight fluorocarbon. Number one is just line management. Braid is going to be more forgiving. The braid is going to be more sensitive. You're going to get further cast. Quite frankly, it's going to last a long time. This is a rod that I've had spooled up all year. I fish for a living. I've had this same braid on this line since January of 2024. It is now Thanksgiving. The other reason is, you remember I told you that if you were using this size spinning reel, the 25 to 3000 series spinning reel, you remember me mentioning that if you get much above 12-pound test, it can get a little bit weird. It really 10-pound test. I like to use 6, 8, and 10, and preferably just 8 and 10, because 6-pound test is not really good for anything. 8-pound tests you can do a lot of things with. 10-pound tests even more. But when you get bigger than 10-pound tests, it's really hard to manage that on a spinning reel. So when you go to braid to fluorocarbon, the fact that the line is more supple, you can go with bigger line and have more ability to turn a fish around or throw a bigger lure and still have line management. Now, with that being said, this is the line size that I recommend. This is the Bass Mooch. I have a bulk spool of Bass Mooch braided line here. I'll leave a link in the description box of the Bass Mooch braided line. I like 10-pound test, no bigger than 15-pound test braided line. For these reels, 10-pound test, 15-pound test is going to be the biggest you need to go. If you get much smaller than 10-pound test, you're going to have more wind knots. You don't know what that is, you'll learn about it soon enough. You get more wind knots in your line, and it's difficult to manage. If you get much bigger than 15-pound test, now you start to sacrifice your casting accuracy and casting distance. 10 to 15 is the sweet spot I found out over time. Now, what I like with braided fluorocarbon setup is now my combo is very flexible. I'm going to tie a line to line union here in a little bit, and you'll be able to see how I now can take 20-pound test, 15-pound test, 12-pound test, 25-pound test if I needed to, and tie that line to this 15-pound test braided line or 10-pound test braided line and get the durability and the strength that I need out of my fishing line to fish a bunch of different situations. I can use 6-pound if I need to. I can use 20. I can use 15. Makes it more versatile. Let me show you what I do, how we're going to tie this braid to fluorocarbon setup. So you can tie your braid straight to your spinning reel if you need to. For this setup, I'm actually going to take this fluorocarbon off that we just spooled. I'm just going to take this off. Remember, if you're looking for my signature series rod or you're looking for any of the equipment that I'm using in this video, you'll be able to find it at bassmooch.com. I am going to put everything in the description box of this video, and I'll put it in the comment section to make it easy for you to find. I'm going to tie my knot for my braid the same way that I tied it earlier. So I'm going to take my braid. It just makes it easier for me if it's on this side. I'm going to take my braid. I'm going to double it up like that. I like to use my ring finger to hold it. And I just take my slack line and I go around the backside about 4 times. I stick it through the loop right here, cinch it down. I'll put that loop that I made around my spinning reel. Now remember, this is 10-pound test braid. I would highly recommend that you not go any bigger than 15-pound test braid. Label side up. Make sure you apply the tension with your finger. You see I got 2 fingers right here. These 2 fingers, I'm applying tension to my braid. And I'm going to fill my spool up. Just like I told you with fluorocarbon, I am not going to fill this spool above the bevel on the spinning reel. You have too much line on there, it is going to cause problems at some point. So I'll do a few more winds. I guess that's what you would say, a few more winds. That should be good. I'll take my scissors, cut it off. Now, Here comes the part where many of you may struggle just a little bit. Is now we've got 10-pound test braid, and we may want to use fluorocarbon as our, they call it tippets or leader line. You may be referred to it to a fluorocarbon leader, a tippet. Why I recommend fluorocarbon if you're a newbie, just straight up fluorocarbon an 8 or 10-pound test, because you may just not be ready to tie these line to line knots. Some of you will be. I know it took me a little while before I was comfortable tying a line to line union. This knot that I like to tie is called an Alberto knot. It's super simple. I'm going to show you how to tie it here. So with an Alberto knot, we start with our fluorocarbon. And you may be wondering, well, how do I know how much fluorocarbon that I'm going to add to that? Is it going to be 6, 8, 10 inches, or is it going to be 3 or 4 foot? The way that I measure my line, and people always over obsess over this, I'm telling you the amount of the line doesn't matter enough for you to over obsess on how much fluorocarbon that you're going to put on this reel, on this braid. The way that I measure it, this is my personal preference. You're going to take your line at the end, just grab it with your fingers, take your arms and just go far apart as you can. Now, don't y'all do this. People do it all the time. It pisses me off. How tall are you? How long are your arms? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how long your arms are. It doesn't matter. Your arms being 2 inches or 4 inches or 5 inches longer than mine does not matter. It just doesn't matter. Just grab that much line, and then I do about a half. And what that does is that keeps the knot that we're about to tie from being too deep down in my spool. I don't want my knot in my spool. Some guys do. I don't put the knot in my spool. Matter of fact, I don't even want the knot going through all of the guides on my reel. I want my knot no more than maybe the 3rd or 4th guide on my rod when I'm reeling it in. And I just lost my little tippet, so I'm gonna have to measure it again. I'll just go this far, and then I'll just do 1. That's it, and I cut the line. Y'all better not ask me how tall I am or how long my arms are, because it doesn't matter enough. You just need about the right amount of line. Keep in mind, you're going to have to retie this throughout the day, so you measuring the line in the beginning doesn't do anything at all. Just put the line on the rod, please. Thank you. This is how we tie it, okay? So what you're going to do, you take your line, you're going to double it up. Bop, bop. You're going to end up with something that looks like that. When I take my line and double it up, you can find knots, the Alberto knots here on my channel. I'll leave a link for that too, so you can see this more in depth. I want to speed this video up so I don't lose your attention. So I'm just going to do it really fast. I'm going to make that double up the line just like this. I'm going to take my braid. I'm going to take my braid and I'm going to stick my braid down that bunny ear that I just made. Bop, just like that. And the way I like to do is I like to take my ring finger, stick it in that loop that I just made. Oops, I lost my line, lost my braid. Where'd it go? Stick it through here. Like that. All right. And very simply, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that braid and I'm going to wrap it from that bunny ear back this way towards my tag ends. I'm going to do about, with this size line, I've got 10-pound test fluorocarbon. I'm going to do 6 wraps going away from the bunny ear. Those 2 pieces of tag end line, I'm just wrapping it around it. I know you probably can't see much in this video. What I want you to do is click on the video about how to tie the Alberto knot in the description box, and that's going to give you more detailed image of what this looked like. Then I'm going to secure it there, and then I'm going to wrap it back towards the bunny ear again. Not going to tie a knot or anything. I'm just going to tie it. I'm going to do the same amount of knots, and you'd like those coils to be about the same amount of distance too. You'll see why. If you get the coils perfectly, then the knot's going to be a lot smaller and smoother. And once you've done that 4 or 5 times, you're still left with this little loop right here. You'll take that line and push it back through that loop the same way that it went in, and you'll start to cinch it down really slowly. You want to do it slowly because you want those coils to line up the same way, to be as even as possible. Once you get it, just moisten that knot a little bit to lubricate that line. Slowly cinch it down, slowly cinch it down, slowly cinch it down. And there it is. There's a line to line knot. The Alberto, easiest knot to tie. Some guys like to use an FG knot. hey, go for it, buddy. If you like to tie the FG knot, go for it. It's the best knot you can tie, but also the best knot you can tie is the knot that you actually can tie. And I can't tie a FG knot, so the Alberto knot is the best one for me. If you don't think the Alberto knot is really a good knot to tie, you can call the police. Okay? And there you are. You're ready. You have a perfect setup to go and do any style finesse fishing that you want to. You can throw shaky heads with this. You could throw a swim bait. You could throw small jigs. You could throw a minnow with it, a fluke style bait, a Ned rig, a drop shot. What else can I throw? I'm looking over there on my tackle wall to see what else I could throw with it. I've thrown jerk baits. I've thrown small crankbaits with this setup, top waters. When I go wade fishing, this is the only setup that I take with this line and this reel setup. It's the most versatile setup you could ever buy. If you want to get my signature series level rod, bassmoosh.com. I'll leave a link in the description box where you can get all the equipment that you saw here in this video. Let me know what you think. What's your favorite length rod? What's something that you fight when you go fishing with the spinning rod? Let me know what your problems are. I'll see if I can make a video to help you with that. Appreciate y'all. Have a great rest of your day. Get out there fishing with your spinning rods.